Okay, so before we even start, I need you to just visualize the title of today's topic.
Mhm.
It's written Poaitry.
Right.
It looks like a typo or, maybe a tech startup that's trying a little too hard. You see that AI jammed right in the middle there.
It's hard to miss. It really stands out visually.
Exactly. But here's the thing, and this is kind of the first rule of the club we're talking about today. You do not pronounce the AI.
No.
You just say poetry.
Which I think is just a brilliant piece of branding, really,
Okay.
because it perfectly sums up the whole philosophy we're about to get into.
Yeah.
The technology is there. I mean, it's right in the center of the word, but it's silent.
It doesn't change the sound of the human voice.
Not at all.
And that distinction is going to be so crucial because today we are diving into the Vinambadi Poetry Club.
Hmm.
And I have to say, usually when we talk about tech meets art, it's all about, disruption or scale.
Or efficiency, yeah.
Yeah.
Generating content.
Right. This is the exact opposite of that. This is about slowing
Hmm.
way, way down.
It's a really fascinating case study. I mean, we're looking at a fusion of these very old world South Indian oral traditions and very specific, almost restrictive modern technology.
And to get it, we have to leave the lecture halls behind. We're heading to a place called Vinambadi. But, I want to manage expectations right out of the gate here.
Uh-huh.
If you pull up Google Maps, you aren't going to find Vinambadi.
Right. It's not a real place. It's not a geolocation. The manifesto actually describes it as a place you arrive at by rumor, by longing, or by accident.
Which is such a poetic way of putting it.
It is. It's an imaginary town very much in the spirit of, say, R.K. Narayan's Malgudi, that famous fictional town that felt more real to readers than their actual cities.
But just because it's fictional doesn't mean it lacks detail. The setting for this club is incredibly specific. It all happens on a thin eye.
And for listeners who might not know, a thin eye is that traditional veranda you see on those century-old tiled houses in South India.
It's such a vital architectural idea, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The thin eye isn't quite inside the house, but it's not really the street either. It's a transition space. It was literally built for strangers, for travelers, and most importantly, for conversation.
So the whole premise of this club is that we are gathering on this metaphorical veranda. And the goal isn't to dissect literature. The mission is surprisingly simple.
Ordinary people for extraordinary lines.
That tagline just floors me. It's a direct rejection of academic gatekeeping, right?
Completely. The idea is that poetry has been kind of locked away in universities for too long, analyzed to death, and they want to give it back to the people who might actually need it to just get through the day.
And that brings us to the actual atmosphere of these sessions, the Thursday gatherings. When you read the protocols for how they run these meetings, it feels almost countercultural.
It's radically inclusive, for one thing. There's a note in their guidelines that says the auto driver's insight carries the same weight as the professor's.
Which sounds nice on paper, but think about what that actually means.
It's huge.
In a typical literature class, context is everything. You need to know the poet's life, the politics of the time, the meter. Here, if an auto driver says, "This line reminds me of the traffic at Silkboard Junction," that is a valid authoritative reading.
Exactly. Because the metric isn't correctness. It's resonance. They actually discourage sharing biographical details or history unless it specifically helps the line land in someone's heart.
So if you're just flexing your knowledge.
You're kind of breaking the vibe. Yeah.
They even protect identities in a really interesting way. They use what they call composite speakers.
This is a great mechanic for privacy. The voices you hear or read about are based on real people, but the details are all blended. So a single story about grief might combine elements from a teacher and, say, a software engineer.
That's so smart because it stops you from trying to figure out, oh, who is that? You're just forced to focus on the emotion itself.
Right.
But the part of the atmosphere that really, it just stopped me in my tracks, is the rule about applause.
Ah, the rule of silence. This is pivotal.
So a speaker finishes sharing a devastatingly beautiful line. In any other setting, a poetry slam, a TED Talk, what do? We clap, we make noise.
We discharge the energy. Applause is a release valve. It says, okay, that moment's over. I appreciate it. Now let's move on.
But the Vinambadi Club forbids it. They mandate a silent pause, a full minute after each speaker.
And 60 seconds is a long time to sit in silence with a group of people.
It's an eternity in our attention economy. But the philosophy is that silence is the deepest form of appreciation. It forces you to sit with the weight of what was just said.
You can't just shake it off. You have to let it sink in.
It reminds me of that feeling when you wake up from a really deep dream and you just need a second before you check your phone.
They're trying to preserve that state. And it's not just silence they invite in. They actually list rain as a co-speaker.
I loved this detail. The weather is a participant.
Because it's on a thinai, a veranda, you're exposed to the elements. So if it starts pouring rain in the middle of a verse about longing, they don't stop.
They just let the rain become the background score.
Yeah, it adds this amazing layer of uncontrollability. You can curate the speakers, but you can't curate the storm.
And that connects to the global side of it, too. The sources say that even though the setting is this rustic village home, tourists and foreigners are welcome.
Right, because they carry lines across borders we cannot.
Okay, so we've set up this very analog, very sensory world. We have jasmine strings, oil lamps, rain, silence. And yet, the club is called Poe AI Try. We have to talk about the tech.
The elephant in the room.
Right, because usually when you see AI and art together, it's about the AI doing the creating.
Like ChatGPT, write me a poem about a lonely robot.
Exactly. But Van and Body takes a really hard stance here. They have this policy of ethical transparency that states AI is servant, not sage.
And that phrase, not sage, that's the key. They believe the human heart is the only technology you need to understand poetry. So they don't use AI to write it, and they definitely don't use AI to explain it.
So what are they using it for?
Strictly for visuals. But even there, the constraint is fascinating. The prompt for the image must come only from the speaker's own words. It's not allowed to interpret the poem itself.
Okay, let's break that down. Because the difference between visualizing and interpreting might sound subtle, but it's actually huge.
It's the difference between a stagehand and a director. So let's say the line is T.S. Eliot's, "I have measured out my life with coffee spoons."
A classic.
Right. Now, if you ask an AI to interpret that, it might spit out an image of a sad old man, maybe a grim reaper holding a spoon. It's telling you, this poem is about mortality.
It's doing the thinking for you. It collapses the poetry, turns a metaphor into a cartoon.
Exactly. But at Van and Body, if the speaker says, "When I hear that line, I just remember the chipped ceramic mug my mother used in 1998, then the AI is used to generate that specific mug.
Ah, I see. So it's rebuilding the speaker's memory, not explaining the poet's intent.
Precisely. It deepens the immersion into that person's specific experience. It creates a backdrop. It lets you see the blue door or the chipped mug that the speaker sees, but it leaves the meaning of the poem totally open.
It's using this high-tech tool to get back to a very old way of storytelling. Sitting around a fire and just describing what you see.
That is a perfect way to put it. It's using the generative engine to amplify human subjectivity, not to replace it with some kind of algorithmic average.
So we have the setting, the tools, but the real product of this club, if you can even call it that, is a practice they call carrying a line.
This is their core curriculum. And honestly, even if you never go to a poetry reading, this concept is a game changer for how we process information.
The manifesto says, a line of poetry is not a trophy to display, it is a seed to carry in your pocket.
And that shift from display to pocket, that's everything. We are so trained to memorize things, to pass tests, or to sound smart at a dinner party.
Right. We treat knowledge as an acquisition. Oh, I've read Dante. It's a badge.
And Van and Body says, forget the badge. You don't need the whole poem. You just need the one line that keeps you company.
But how do you find that line? Because I think a lot of people feel intimidated. They pick up a book of poetry and just feel lost.
The club makes it simple. They give you 3 physical indicators. You're not looking for the best line. You're looking for a line that either itches, settles, or startles.
Okay, let's go through those. The itch.
Think of a pebble in your shoe. You read a line and it just bothers you. Maybe you don't agree with it, maybe it's confusing, but you can't stop thinking about it. That friction means it's hooked into something.
Okay, then the settle.
This is the opposite. It's the feeling of a deep exhale. You read it and you just feel understood. It puts words to something you've felt but could never name. It validates you.
And the last one, the startle.
This is when the words actually reframe the physical world around you. The source gives an example of seeing rain on a window pane. And suddenly, a line you read years ago just pops into your head and it completely changes the way the rain looks.
It breaks the autopilot of daily life.
Exactly.
There was a specific example in the source material I found so moving. It was about the line, "But I have promises to keep."
From Robert Frost, yeah.
Right. And I've always heard that line interpreted as this like grim determination, the daily grind. I can't rest, I have to work.
That's the standard take. Duty over desire.
But the story from the club was about a woman using it during her 6 a.m. commute. She was going to a hospital where her father was dying.
Wow. That recontextualization is so powerful.
She wasn't using it as a whip to drive herself forward. She said she used it as quiet companionship. The source says the line did not fix grief, it kept her company inside it.
And that difference between fixing and accompanying, that's the absolute heart of carrying. The line isn't a tool to solve your problem.
No.
It's a friend that sits on the bench with you while you endure it.
So, okay, let's say a listener finds a line. It itches or it settles. What do they actually do with it? The club has a list of 3 tiny practices. And I love these because they're so low effort.
They're invisible practices. You can do them in public and nobody would even know.
Okay, so the first one is the threshold whisper.
This uses the psychology of event boundaries. You know how you can walk into a room and completely forget why you went in there?
All the time.
That's because your brain treats a doorway as a kind of reset button. So the threshold whisper hacks that. As you cross a doorway leaving for work, getting on the subway, you just say the line silently to yourself. You anchor the poem to that transition.
I tried this yesterday. Every time I walk through a door, I just muttered it. And it's weirdly grounding. It turns a mindless movement into a tiny ritual.
It creates a breath between worlds, as they say.
The second one is the palm right. This one is for the fidgeters, which is definitely me.
Yeah, this is a tactile one. When you're stuck waiting somewhere, you use your finger to trace the line, or just a keyword from it, onto your own palm.
And why the physical act? Why not just say it in your head?
Because anxiety lives in the body. So by engaging your sense of touch, you kind of bypass the brain's anxiety of memorization.
Yeah.
You're storing it in your muscle memory, not just on your mental hard drive.
It's like a worry stone, but it's made of language.
Exactly. And the third one is the object anchor.
This one is classic conditioning, right? You pick a mundane object, your keychain, a light switch, your coffee mug, and you decide, this object means this line.
So every time you touch your keychain,
You trigger the line. But, and this part's important, they say, no performance required. If you touch the keys and forget the line, it's fine. It's not a test. It's just a gentle nudge.
it's like you're turning your whole house into a living poem.
You're enchanting the mundane.
So we have to talk about the life cycle of these lines, because meaning is never static. The club has a whole section on evolution and release.
This is probably the most mature part of their philosophy, acknowledging that the line you carry today might mean something completely different to you in a year.
They use the Tagore line, where the mind is without fear. A very famous line. Usually you hear it and you think of freedom, courage. When you first carry it, it might feel like armor.
A thin.
Life happens. You burn out. You fail. And suddenly you might hear that same line, where the mind is without fear. And it just sounds like exhaustion. It sounds like, I am so tired of being brave.
And eventually.
Eventually, it might even become surrender. What if I just let go? The line grows with you. It's not a stone tablet. It's a living plant.
But sometimes you do have to put it down. The source says you know it's time when a phrase begins to feel like a stone in your pocket rather than a seed.
That's the signal to release it. If the line starts to feel heavy, like an obligation or just a bad memory, you let it go.
And the instruction is to place it back in the poem.
Which I love. You don't throw it away, you return it to the source. It's like returning a book to the library so someone else can check it out.
It reinforces that idea that poetry is a river you walk beside. You don't try to put the whole river in your pocket.
It's such a healthy way to view information in general. We hoard so much, we bookmark articles we never read. The Vadambati approach is just take the one sip you need and let the rest flow by.
And the ultimate goal isn't to become some kind of poetry person. The final takeaway from the source material, I think, sums it up perfectly.
The best carried lines leave no trace on the carrier, only a softening in how they meet the world.
A softening in how they meet the world.
That's it. That's the entire return on investment. Not a degree, not a publication, just a slight softening of the edges.
So we've covered the imaginary town, the silent applause, the AI that paints but doesn't speak, and the art of carrying a line. I think the challenge for our listener today is pretty clear.
It is. We aren't asking you to go read a whole anthology. In fact, please don't. That's way too much pressure.
We're just inviting you to keep your ears open for one phrase. It could be from a song, a book, something a friend says.
Find the one thing that itches, settles, or startles you.
Yeah.
And then just try to carry it. Try the threshold whisper next time you walk into your office. See what happens.
And so we'll leave you with this thought to mull over. If you stripped away all the need to analyze or critique or look smart, if you didn't have to understand the context, what single sentence from your own life would you choose to put in your pocket tomorrow?
And how might that sentence change the way you open a door or hold a cup of coffee?